Next on our list of 2022 NFL teams, Los Angeles Chargers, another hyper-talented AFC West team with a really high-end quarterback that went through a bunch of changes in the offseason. Last year for the Chargers, they were right there. They were on the edge. They had a lot of stuff go wrong right around the edges as far as losing close games, having injuries in important positions at bad times, and just missing out with some of the variance that comes with football. You also had some inconsistencies from a still young Justin Herbert. But overall, this team was really talented, and they were really close to winning a lot of football games. From that team, you lose almost nothing on the offensive side of the football. Brian Bulaga, clearly the best player on this list, but injured almost all last year, by proxy. You're not going to end up missing him too much. The rest of these guys doesn't even matter. Ode Bushioke starter, but whatever. Defensively, a lot of players I like. Justin Jones, Linval Joseph, Uchenna Nwosu, all really pretty damn good players along the defensive line, especially Justin Jones. But they did a really good job of replacing the production or shifting the production into more important areas. And they finally get Chris Harris gone, who, while he used to be amazing on the Broncos, was anything but as he's been in Los Angeles. Additions-wise, offensively, Gerald Everett, I'm a gigantic fan of Gerald Everett. He was one of the absolute best offensive weapons on the Rams teams when he was there. Criminally underutilized by that coaching staff. I think basically the one thing they've done wrong since they've been there, and they've done a lot of things right. I love that coaching staff, but that's the one thing. And last year he went to Seattle, who actually has the worst offensive coaching in football, and that kind of buried him as the type of player he is. Just wasn't the type to see the field under Pete Carroll. Defensively, there are so many good players on this list. We'll talk about it more when we get to the defense as a whole. But, you're talking about J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, Bryce Kelly, and even Sebastian Joseph Day, guys who are, literally elite, top 5 guys at their positions. Maybe not Joseph Day quite so much, but so many additions I like. This is a draft class. With rookies, I don't really like talking about it very much. Just about everybody's wrong about how good they are coming into the NFL. That's no exception for this team. The one difference here is that we do at least have to mention Zion Johnson because he's a first-round pick and he's going to be a day-one starter on their offensive line. How good is he going to be? Literally no idea. But we do at least have to talk about him. So this is the offense as a whole. And the first thing we need to talk about here is the offensive line. Because of all the teams we talked about, all the position groups we talked about, this is the one, it's not the worst, but it's the one with the most potential to torpedo the team. Why is that? It's because of the right side here. I love a lot of the players. In fact, Rashawn Slater, a huge fan of Corey Linsley, maybe best center in football. Matt Filer is pretty good at what he does, but Storm Norton is a unconscionably bad player. Now, he wasn't quite as bad as I expected him to be last year, but my expectations for him were literally the worst offensive lineman in the entirety of the NFL. So that's not saying much, and he was still bad. If this team is serious about winning the Super Bowl or winning games in the playoffs, he just can't be starting. Now, do they really have options at the moment? No, that's something they got to fix. But right now, it's a problem. And Trey Pipkins, the other guy who might start there, not much better. He's barely played football since being a third-round pick 3 years ago. And when he's been on the field, I think he's shown more than Storm Norton ever has. It's still not something that's encouraging that I would expect to go well over a large period of snaps. But let's talk about the run game first. This team is going to kind of suck running the ball again, just like they did last year. They're used to it. They can deal with it. But you just look at what this team's strengths are. For as much as I like Rashawn Slater, he's kind of a mid-pat or run blocker. Matt Filer is absolutely not what he does well. Corey Linsley's good, but he's one guy. Zion Johnson, who knows? And Storm Norton, like I said, he does. The one thing he does do is he has a little bit of athleticism moving down the field and run blocking. He's still not good at it compared to actual good players. So that combined with a bad scheme, they still lean on this this type of running scheme that's a bunch of draw plays, and it doesn't really take advantage of the width of the field in a lot of ways that the actual good running teams do. They just kind of put their running backs in tough positions and, frankly, put their offensive linemen in tough positions that end up going badly. A lot of ankle tackles in the backfield is what you see because of that. But whatever, it's the running game. Doesn't really matter, and it's not like they're going to be unable to do it at all. So it is what it is. The passing side of the ball, though, obviously way more important to talk about. So this is where the offensive line can come through, especially the left side is really, really good. Rashawn Slater, a huge fan of, had a great rookie year. He'll only get better. Already a really positive pass blocker against a ton of different types of pass rushers. Corey Linsley is probably the best pass protecting center in the NFL, except for maybe Rodney Hudson. Matt Filer, that is what he does well, while I still am a little concerned about his play strength, that he can get kind of bull rushed by the Chris Joneses of the world. You rarely come across those guys. In fact, there's only one of them. And otherwise, he's fine. Now, the right side, like I said, who knows that with Zion Johnson and the right tackle spot, that sucks. But that is the beauty of Justin Herbert, who I finally get to talk about as kind of got to the Chargers late at the beginning of last year. Justin Herbert's awesome. Clearly a top 10 quarterback, probably significantly better than that. He's somebody who consistently takes positive chances with the ball down the field, without putting it into a ton of danger, as opposed to somebody like a Baker Mayfield or someone who will throw the ball down the field into hopeless situations. Justin Herbert does it into places where his receivers can legitimately win. He also can make quick decisions at the line of scrimmage. He can read defenses. He can get the ball out of his hands quickly into positive matchups. And while he does still have issues with throwing the ball super hot against blitzes, he can miss some rushes like that. And he's not perfect as far as reading the field, first to last progression. He's good enough at it that when you combine it with this other stuff, the dude's awesome. Consistent playmaker, winning quarterback. And what he's throwing to is crazy good. Maybe one of the best position groups in the NFL, maybe the best. Keenan Allen is a receiver who is a driver of play all by himself. It's something that I talk about with the best receivers in football, like I did with Devontae Adams with the Raiders. And what that means is that regardless of situation, regardless of matchup, regardless of what's happening, the dude is open and presents an option for the quarterback to move the ball, or the offense in general, to move the ball up and down the field. That's the single most useful skill set you can have as a player on the offensive side of the football. And Keenan Allen does that. Now, he does miss out on some of the higher end stuff as far as explosive plays, being a true deep down the field target, whatever. He's so good at what he does. It's as much as you need. Mike Williams, too, a player I'm a huge fan of. Really happy that he finally got the stats to back that up last year. The dude is way more than just a deep ball threat. While he's not elite at winning underneath, he is so much better than a guy like a Cortland Sutton or something like that, who is only good for that. Mike Williams does win underneath. He can win with leverage. He can use his body to actually shield players over the middle of the ball, the middle of the field. He's fine after the catch. Mike Williams is awesome, and there's a reason he finally put up those numbers when he stayed on the field and he stayed healthy. You also have real depth here. Jalen Guyton, I talked about last year going into how good he was. That's still the case. And while he is more of a system-based guy, not someone who creates mismatches by himself or creates a ton of openings, when he's in the course of an offense, he will take advantage of what is there for him, and he's so fast, which combined with Justin Herbert and his arm, is really positive. Josh Palmer, people liked as a rookie. I thought he was fine. He could definitely get better. There were signs of him being a useful NFL receiver. Now, he wasn't out here cooking people or making these nuts plays, but that's not really what makes a good receiver most of the time. I do think he clearly has a role in the offense and is at least a relevant player. Gerald Everett, though, I can talk about specifically what he does. I already mentioned I'm a huge fan of him. Gerald Everett, especially from the tight end position, just wins. He has the equivalent, not to the same degree, but the equivalent skill set to Keenan Allen as far as the tight end goes. The dude is just open a ton if you watch him. Underneath, or even not just underneath, even into the middle of the field, way past the range of most tight ends, and when they lose their usefulness. Gerald Everett's awesome. He's also one of the best after the catch tight ends in the NFL. And when you put him on this team as which has so much focus on other guys, and actually as a quarterback is going to move the ball around, A+ on that signing, Gerald Everett's going to be awesome. Donald Parham Jr. even can offer some stuff, and Austin Eckler, maybe the best receiving back in football are right there, and he also wins underneath. So when you look at this offense as a whole, you're talking about a really good quarterback with literally 5 options per play who win in positive areas of the field, in positive ways, and with quickness. That's going to lead to a ton of success. And while there is that huge issue on the right side of this offensive line, it's really hard for teams to take advantage of that to the point where it torpedoes the rest of the offense. So while I do still think there are going to be inconsistencies, as we've seen the last couple of years, because Justin Herbert's, he's not perfect yet, and they are not a 100% go offense because of the right side of the offensive line or in the run game, they're good enough that it's going to be really, really hard over the course of the game to stop this team from scoring, getting into the 20s. And when we talk about how good this defense probably will be, that's not looking too bad. So I'd be really excited if I was a Chargers fan about this offense. Now we talk about the defense. Wow, as far as the additions go. It's hard, like I said, to bring in this much talent in one offseason. It's maybe impossible most of the time. First, let's talk about the defensive line, though. And this is something I think that is important to remember. They did get a little bit worse at this position. Justin Jones is one of the better defensive tackles in all of football. He left. He was injured for a lot of last year. Linval Joseph does his job just about as well as anybody does as far as nose tackle goes. And while they brought in some names, they aren't as high-end as those guys. They are still really good, though. Start with Sebastian Joseph-Day, player I've been a fan of since, when I very started this, 3 years ago, before he kind of broke out on the Rams. The dude he gets in the way and is really annoying as a nose tackle, and he's more than just a run-only, stick-in-place guy. He actually gets into the backfield. He creates negative movement for the offensive line, and he can shed blocks to actually make plays. Sebastian Joseph-Day is awesome. Not a pass rusher at all. Who cares, really? He's a nose tackle. He's good. Austin Johnson, they also bring from the Giants, another player I really like. He can make a lot of plays. He has really good hands. He has penetration. While he's not the brick wall that Joseph Day is, he's a fine enough run defender that he's a really useful player. You get probably to see a lot more Christian Covington this year. Hell yeah, Christian Covington's been really good for a long time. Last year he was a little bit disappointing to me personally, but he's still an overall positive player who creates, again, penetration in a useful way. And he's not really high end. He's not going to do that every play or anything like that. But he does enough that he's useful. Morgan Fox, and I kind of sound like a broken record here because all these players are really similar, but they showed a clear target in their skill sets, and that skill set is one that wins in the NFL. Morgan Fox, yeah, he wins. The dude gets in the backfield, he makes plays, and he's not going to get pushed around in the run game. Jared Tillery, he's the one I need to take a pause and talk about. He was a former first-round pick he has a really unique skill set that I think they use wrong, and I think they're going to continue to do so. But it is what it is. So what he does, he's a really hyper-athletic defensive tackle who, when he wins hard and wins quickly and quickly shed blocks at the line of scrimmage. And I say make plays, but actually a lot of times he ends up missing the running back, but he gets in the way and kind of makes the running back do stuff he doesn't want to do, which ends up in other guys making the tackle. That's awesome to a point, but he gets shoved around. He's just weak as far as a run defender goes, which is interesting. He's really strong with his hands, pass rushing, but he's really weak as far as anchoring and sticking in place. The dude's just going to get shoved around, especially by double teams. He just can't do it. And that's why what I think he should be doing, actually, is he should be playing edge. While he's going to be oversized for that position, we've literally seen him consistently have the strength to hold up to tackles or even tight ends in those positions. And he still has the quickness and agility and hand usage to be a useful player as far as pass rusher goes from that side. Now, that's just a unique thing. This team doesn't even run like a 4-3 where he'd be playing true defensive end where I wanted to be. But that's just something I want to point out with Jerry Tillery. He'd be way better at doing that than what he's going to be asked to do. As is, he's just a kind of hit-or-miss home run hitter type guy, but he's going to be rotated in and out so much that I think that still actually is a useful skill set. Linebacker-wise, wow. Joey Bosa's hyper-elite. One of the guys who can win in 0.2 seconds as far as getting up the line of scrimmage and killing a tackle, which is the same way I talked about Keenan Allen's skill set from wide receiver. That's the equivalent here. It's the single best thing you can do as a pass rusher, or really as a defensive player, front seven defensive player. Joey Bosa does that. That's awesome. Khalil Mack, he's not that type of pass rusher. He put up a ton of sacks before, but I talked about the last couple of years, which was I think pretty clearly proven last year. He's not actually a elite pass rusher. What he does is he collapses pockets. He shoves tackles who don't have the play strength to keep up with him back into the quarterback's lap. And while sometimes he ends up finishing a lot of those plays, depending on the quarterback's decision making, mostly what he's good for is just making guys uncomfortable, which, don't get me wrong, is still really, really good. And when you combine that with somebody like Joey Bosa on the other side, it's nuts. And those two, as a run-defending edge pair, are, I'm going to go ahead and assume, the best in football. As long as Joey Bosa stays healthy. Khalil Mack is hyper-elite. He's right there with Myles Garrett as the best run defenders from the edge position in football. Joey Bosa makes plays constantly. He does have, the dudes are awesome. Borderline impossible to run the ball to the edges against this team, which is really important in the modern NFL, right? Because that's the type of things that the good running teams are trying to exploit, the 49ers, Rams, that type of stuff. And they can get in the way of that. The rest of this linebacker core, they're actually names that I like, okay. Drew Tranquil, I'm a fan of. I'm really glad they finally saw they should have been starting him last year. While he's not a high-end playmaker, he's not somebody who is proactive in making plays. He is somebody that does consistently react in time to make a difference. He does have some athleticism. He does have some range, sideline to sideline. He can play pass coverage good enough to be on the field. And Troy Reeder is actually a really similar player. They bring him over from the Rams, where he started a decent number of games, and I think he's actually a really similar player. He doesn't have the range, he doesn't have quite the athleticism, But he can be on the field and not be a disaster, and I like that a lot, especially when you can talk about the talent around those guys. Kenneth Murray Jr., he's starting the season on the physical and perform list. He is, I thought he was the best rookie in that class as far as linebackers go a couple years ago when there was like 3-4 guys drafted in the first round. And he still shows signs of that. He can trigger really quickly. He can make plays. He does clearly have a lot of speed from that linebacker position. But, mentally, I don't think he's there yet. Will still get misled by some misdirection from smarter offenses as a pass coverage guy. While he has the athleticism, doesn't really have the wherewithal to keep up in zone coverage. But he's not bad, to be clear. He's just not as good as the other guys on his team. When he comes back, I do still think he's just good enough player that he should be starting and will continue to get better. But whatever. As a front seven, this team is elite because of how good these edges are, combined with so many other, at least vaguely positive players. You're talking about a team that's going to be borderline impossible to run that ball against because of how they interact with the edges of the run game. And a team, front seven, that's going to generate so much pass rush because of those aforementioned guys. It's just awesome. I should mention Kyle Van Noy, too. I like that pickup a lot. He's not really anything as a pass rusher anymore, but he's a smart player who gets some gaps really well and does at least as a pass coverage guy dropping from the edge, or if it's in the middle, which might be on this team. He can make plays. He can be a useful player. For sure. I even kind of like Chris Rumpf, actually. I should mention, too, as a backup edge, because that is the one spot they're very shallow at. So now we get to talk about another elite position group, which is their secondary. They bring in J.C. Jackson. I think I have him ranked as the second best corner in football. He sticks with everyone. He's, of all the players in the league, who I think it's even possible to throw on an island with Devontae Adams and not get cooked for 300 yards in a game. He's number one, probably. Maybe Jalen Ramsey? No, he's number one. Michael Davis has shown to be a positive starter for the last multiple years. The dude's really good. Sunday Samuel was a rookie last year, showed a ton. And while he's not a man coverage stick, but somebody at the line of scrimmage guy, that's fine because he is really smart in off coverage. He reacts and breaks the ball really quickly. He has ball skills. Sunday Samuel Jr. is good. So you have three really, really good outside corners there, including somebody at the very high end of the league. And you bring over Bryce Kelly. This team is going from some of the worst corner or slot play in Chris Harris to some of the absolute peak in Bryce Kelly. The dude is awesome. He is the inside equivalent to J.C. Jackson on the outside. And J.C. Jackson can play inside too, but whatever. You get the point. The dude is amazing, and he helps a ton in run support, which I should mention while I'm here too. Safety-wise, this is the spot to attack on this team. People love Derwin James. I don't really get it. I do think he's good. I think he's clearly in the top, whatever half. He's better in the top third of safeties in football. But he's not this crazy playmaker the way I expected him to be the way people talked about him. In the run game, he definitely gets up there. He clearly has this size-speed combination that is unique to him throughout the NFL. But how that actually plays out on the field, it's just good. It's not great. It's not elite. He's just pretty good. Not somebody that I can actually stick with tight ends and man coverage the way people were hoping, like a Travis Kelce. We clearly saw that. And Nasir Adderley, he's just like a average center fielder safety. He's undersized, not a great run. Actually, he's decent run support for that role, but not overall. And while he can sit back and be mostly safe, he's not this. He's definitely not Ed Reed, which nobody expects him to be. But the point is, to attack this defense, when you look at it, it's clearly the soft spot through the middle of the field. That can be an issue against the really high end of modern NFL offenses, the Rams, Chiefs, that type of stuff. Against most teams, though, and it's not like those guys are bad, to be very clear, they're just not as elite as the guys in front. This defense as a whole is awesome. Outside of that straight down core of the defense, which is just good to very good instead of elite, this team is crazy. They're going to shut down a ton of people. And what that does is when you combine with an offense that, on its day, can win the game by themselves, this gives them ways to bring up the floor that I think they have, which is still pretty good, and it ends up with them competing and or winning a lot of games. And if you are looking for a team that can actually blow teams out, which is not something every NFL team can do, this is the one, because this is a defense that can keep teams under 10 points, and when you give that offense that many chances, this is a team that can blow teams out really frequently. And as far as what they are compared to the rest of the AFC West that we've talked about, I think they're the best of the three for sure. They have the better, so Russell Wilson might be better, but not by much. Justin Herbert's really good, and I do think he's clearly better than Derek Carr. And defensive talent-wise, this team is just in a different world than those two. And while offensively, again, I do think they have a little bit more of a concern about, this team is really, really good so far, and I would be so excited. This team should clearly make the playoffs, and I think they do have what it takes to challenge the Chiefs in this crazy AFC West for 2022.